This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Katherine Schneide. The National Park Service is gearing up for its busy season in many parts of the country, but this year, some of the parks will have a smaller staff to assist visitors. The National Park Service has laid off more than 1,000 employees as part of the Trump administration's downsizing of the federal workforce. That's according to reporting from National Public Radio. Here in Connecticut, the National Park Service helps manage trails like the Appalachian Trail, but there are also 142 state parks and forests across the state. More and more people are turning to outdoor recreation in Connecticut. In fact, there was a 75% increase in state park visitors in 2022. That's according to the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, or also known as DEEP. But are our parks and forests accessible to all Connecticut residents? That's something the state is working on. Last year, DEEP launched all-terrain wheelchairs at 5 Connecticut state parks and forests. We'll hear more about that later. First, making outdoor spaces more accessible means providing a range of accommodations for people with disabilities. Our next guest says that nature itself is welcoming of all people. Joining us is Kevin Harkins, who's the Vice President of the Southeast Connecticut Community Center of the Blind. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, Kevin, tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get introduced to the outdoors?
Well, I got introduced to the outdoors pretty much at the age of 0. I grew up in eastern Connecticut in the town of Griswold, where my family had over 200 acres of wonderful land, a very precious habitat on the banks of the Quinnipiac River. So I grew up with the trees and the flowers and the butterflies and the bumblebees, and it sounds like a poem in the making, but I grew up to love nature, and I found that nature was very soulful, I guess I would say, very spiritual to me.
Just the way you're describing that, all of us here in the studio are super jealous that you grew up with that much land and that early introduction to nature, and poetic indeed. Can you talk about what misconceptions are there about people with disabilities and the great outdoors?
Well, I don't know if it's as much misconception as that we aren't accustomed to thinking about that, and that's changing. 15 years ago, I don't think you heard that much about making trails accessible or making parks welcoming of folks in wheelchairs or folks who were visually impaired or people who had a cognitive disability. It's almost the domino effect. As one group says, let's have this conversation, let's learn, let's heighten our awareness, all of a sudden other groups are picking up on the idea. Even at the Center of the Blind, I would say it's really only been the past couple of 3, maybe 4 years that we've been focusing on partnering to raise awareness of the importance of that accessibility and trying to lend some expertise, if there is such a thing, but certainly perspective on how accessibility might be accomplished. In my case, I'm totally blind, and I learned stuff from other folks who can't see that I didn't think about what's useful on a trail or what can be helpful when positioning park benches or signage or whatever. So it's really been an exciting journey.
When it comes to making trails and outdoor spaces more accessible and safe for people of all abilities, what comes to mind for you?
You know, we're talking about folks with various degrees of visual impairment, but we're also talking about people with cognitive disabilities, people who use wheelchairs, people who may have functional difficulty with balance and things like that. Mm-hmm. It's not so much a matter of build it and they will come. That formula doesn't really work. It's really more about engaging the people who you think will like to use the area to make sure that it's welcoming, to make sure that it's usable for them. When we talk about having access to nature, I think we really talk about something that is extremely healing for people, collectively and individually.
This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Katherine Schneide. The National Park Service laid off 1,000 employees in February. In Connecticut, there are a number of trails and sites managed by the National Park Service. There are also 110 state parks across Connecticut. But are these outdoor spaces accessible to all visitors? Joining us now to talk about that and more is Mason Trumbull. He's a deputy commissioner at the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, also known as DEEP. Mason, welcome back to Where We Live.
Good morning, Catherine. Thanks so much for having us on.
And also with us is Akibia Hicks, who's the project manager for DEEP. Akibia, thanks for joining us as well.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Super excited to talk about this.
Akibia, I want to start with you here. Last year, you started bringing all-terrain wheelchairs to state parks here in Connecticut. How did that all get started?
We actually got started with that, with partnering with local groups and learning more about community needs. We did a little bit of surveying. These specialized chairs are there to help visitors with mobility challenges be able to explore trails, beaches, and open spaces that were previously inaccessible. So we have the track chairs, which are really great for the rough terrain and steeper inclines. And then we have the wheel-based chairs that are designed for smoother paths and trails. So a lot of this process has been a lot of us just listening. We really wanted to make sure we were getting that local feedback. That was super important for us. We met with different organizations individually. We attended different ADA working groups and just learning more about what people want instead of assuming what folks are wanting, just asking people what they want and listening.
Well, we also heard from someone else before the show who is also very involved in this community. We spoke with some members of the disability community, AJ Williams, who suffers from a rare autoimmune disease, and she's also a kidney transplant recipient. She shared with us some of the barriers that people with disabilities have before hitting the trail.
Risk assessment, I think, is a really big part of anyone with chronic illness and disabilities that spend time outside. And when we think about usership, so much is geared toward, I think, physical disabilities, but it would be so much more helpful, right, if every trailhead had a map of what the trail was, how long it was going to be, where the park benches are to sit, where there might be water access. And I think for someone with, say, anxiety, not having that information could be a really big deterrent to being able to use that trail.
We also spoke to Siren Nagakiri, who is the founder of Disabled Hikers, which is a group working to get more people with disabilities outdoors and build community.
Yeah, I think the information that's available is definitely really inconsistent. The type of information that is available across parks varies a lot. Whether it's been updated recently varies a lot. So it may be 10 to 15 years old. And it takes a lot of time for myself as a disabled hiker to find the information that I need. I have to go to multiple sources, from guidebooks to land manager websites to trail apps, look at reviews, look at photos. It takes me a few hours to prepare for every hike.
So, Mason, I would love to hear your thoughts about what we heard from AJ and Siren, especially they both touched on not only physical disabilities, but also mental as well.
When I think about just getting outside in general, having that information is so key for anyone. And then obviously for folks with disabilities, it's just that much more important. And are we perfect here in Connecticut? No. But we are making a lot of progress in that direction. The parks are also one of the first things when you think about like budget cuts, right? Some folks don't consider them essential services or what have you. Here in Connecticut, we're lucky. We've got $70 million in the last 2 years to invest in the types of infrastructure in our state parks, including ADA infrastructure that makes it more accessible to everyone. Infrastructure is expensive.
We also spoke to Jonathan Sigworth. He's a wheelchair user and co-founder, co-CEO, and president of the nonprofit More Than Walking.
All-terrain wheelchairs sound amazing. I've never had the opportunity to use one. I think that every small step, making parks more accessible, making beaches more accessible, getting those amazing beach mats that allow me in Stratford to roll out to the end of the sand to the water's edge, like that puts me out in a place where people can see me. People can see that I exist as a wheelchair user, that we deserve the same access to our communities and quality of life as everyone else.